Springboks' initial squad to play the Welsh has been announced. It's a relatively big squad, like 43, 44 guys. There's a few fellas out. There's certainly a few new inclusions, which is pleasing. But yeah, we'll go through the squad pretty quickly, talk about who's in and who's out. And you guys can let me know your thoughts on how this squad is looking. My first impression is it's pretty tidy. And I'm pretty pleased for some of the form players. Because if there's one thing we've seen under Jacques Nienaber is it's kind of more under the consistency than the rotation. You know, there's always that balance between building depth and also keeping a winning squad. Not helped by the fact that they didn't play any games in 2020 when other teams were about and kind of able to blood some guys. These guys would drop straight into the Lions Tour and kind of had to win straight away. So not really the right atmosphere for a heck of a lot of rotation, but we certainly see a few new names on this board, and pleasingly, a bunch of guys in the URC who have been doing really well. Like the majority, just over half of the squad is URC based, and it's pleasing to see guys who've had good domestic form be rewarded with Springboks' initial call-up. So, yeah, the squad: Toit, Kitshoff, Koch, Malherbe, Mchunu, and Nche plus Nyakane are your props. Mchunu is the only debutant there. Otherwise, I mean, that's a pretty mean-looking list of props. A couple of guys based abroad with Nyakane and Frans, Koch over in the Premiership. But, I mean, if you watch the URC semi-final with the Stormers, Kitshoff was in cracking form. He continues on. Malherbe as well. Ox has been in good form all season. So, I think you'd be pretty happy with the Springbok props. You guys have probably the best depth in props of any of the teams in World Rugby. Hookers is kind of steady as she goes. Dweba, Marx and Mbonambi, so there's no real changes there. You would like to see Dweba get a bit more game time because I think he's had very, very limited, was it like one game? He's not had a lot of game time. So we know about Marx and Mbonambi. Those guys are proper units. So it would be nice to see Dweba just get that little bit more game time. Locks, Jager, Etzebeth, Moerat, Nortje, Ori, and there's a few utility guys there as well. But in terms of those specialist locks, I think that's pretty steady as she goes. Jager and Etzebeth have been around for what seems like forever. Moerat and Nortje are guys in on the back of some good URC form. Like I mentioned, I feel like Moerat may have been in the squad before, but he's still uncapped. Nortje, I think this is his first call-up. Ori is, he must still be in single-digit caps. But, again, with locks, I do feel like that's another position of strength. Lucy's, Pieter-Steph, I think he was named with the Lucy's because they did name another group of guys as their kind of utility forwards or something like that. But Pieter-Steph, Marcel Coetzee is back in the squad. Speaking of guys who've been in good form, for the Bulls, he's been phenomenal. Like, he was like their top offloader, top tackler, he's top try scorer. Like, what is he not doing for the Bulls? If he didn't get called up, you would have had to ask yourself kind of what's going on with this selection, because in terms of form, he's been cracking it. Khaleesi, Elric Lowe and Evan Roos, those guys, speaking of guys in form, I mean, I wasn't sure they would pick all of them, or both of them, but, if you include Coetzee as kind of a guy back in, at least one of these guys had to be included, so the fact that all three of them are there is really, really pleasing stuff as well. And then Quaka Smith plus Jasper Visa are there as well as guys who are based abroad. Visa's been in pretty good form in the Prem. I haven't seen anything of the Japanese league, so I'm not sure how Quaka has been going. And then you got three guys who are kind of listed as those utility guys in Alstart, Fourie, and Mostert. So Alstart and Mostert, those kind of lock loose forward covers. And then Dion Fourie, hooker and loose forward. I haven't seen him play hooker for a long time, but he has been, he's a senior guy at this point, well into his 30s, but he's been everywhere this season. He's the top turnover merchant in the URC. So I wouldn't have expected it. I honestly didn't. I didn't pick it. I thought his ship had kind of sailed just age-wise, but purely on form, man. Plus, he's got a bit of experience and he can cover hooker. Like, that's credit to the coaching staff for still taking a gamble. It's not really a gamble with a guy his age, but you know what I mean. At international level, on a guy like Dion Fourie. Halfbacks to Clerk, Hendrickse, Herschel Yankees, Grant Williams. And then I've got Reinach here as well. Some lists have included him, some lists haven't, but he's still rehabbing. So he's not initially available, but he is, I think, in the framework. So, yeah, all of those guys are there. Grant Williams, I don't know that he's been getting that much time at URC level, so it's an interesting one to see him. They must see something in him that they want to kind of develop. I mean, 4 halfbacks, 4 scrum halves, or 5 really, if you've got Reinach there as well, is a fair bit. How many minutes are going to go beyond Faf? We'll kind of have to wait and see. And then Hussein is also another guy who's back, but I believe he's still rehabbing, but I did see him on all the lists. He's another guy who's been kind of called back, but he's been out for a wee while. So, yeah, that's encouraging for him. I thought once he got injured, his chance had maybe gone by, but there he is. Elton Yankees and Andre Pollard as well. Elton's been in the news for the wrong reasons with some kind of legal thing, but I would still say Pollard's your main guy. And then another big call-up. I mean, you got Armand de Allende, which is kind of par for the course, plus Jesse Creel. And then Andre Esterhazen's back in the squad as well. If you've been watching any Premiership rugby, which happily I have this year, that guy's also been tearing it up. So it's another, like Marcel Coetzee, like Lowe and Rus, like a guy genuinely in very good form who returns to the squad after seemingly being on the outer. So that's really pleasing. And you could say the same as we get on the list. Fassi, Galant, Colby, LaRue, Mapimpi. Those are your outside backs. Galant is another guy. Remember, he's been in the Springboks before, seemingly on the outer, but he's genuinely been very good all year. Even when the South African side started off in the URC, and they weren't looking that flash when they were in Europe, remember? I mean, things have turned around a lot since then. But, I mean, even back then, Galant was still looking good. He was kind of standing out when the teams weren't looking fantastic. So, really pleased for him. LaRue is the one guy who's going to cop most of the stick from the supporters online, I would imagine. And then Arendse, Willemse, and Reinach. Not Reinach. Arendse and Willemse. Wasn't there one more? Am I missing a guy? Were the guys who were listed as kind of utility guys as well. Arendse on form in the URC has been genuinely very good this year as well. Very dangerous. So, yeah, there's a few uncapped guys in this squad. The obvious big omissions are Dwayne Vermeulen, but from what I read, he is due to have a knee operation, so they're not going to play him in the July window. They'll let him have his operation and then recover. Frans Steyn, I believe, got injured in the Currie Cup match a while ago. Marco van Staden, I think, has not been playing for Leicester recently. He's injured. There was one more guy. Achis Snyman. He got injured for Munster a while back. So all of these guys certainly out and unavailable. There's a couple of guys who I don't think were in the conversation due to not having South African passports. That would be Madosh Tambwe, because he's been in cracking form, but I don't think he's on a South African passport. And Vincent Ntuthuko as well, not on a South African passport. So I don't think they would have been in the conversation, unless someone can correct me otherwise. I believe that is the case. Guys who are genuinely maybe a bit unlucky on form, I would have thought Krabala for hooker from the Bulls. Maybe the fact that Dion Fourie gets rewarded means that Krabala is kind of out. Maybe. Because I think they were pretty happy with Dweba, and I haven't been watching the top 14, but I know his team's been going pretty well. The Dupree brothers, I guess, but would you rather have the Dupree brothers back, or would you rather have Elric Lowe and Rus into the squad? You know what I mean? So, it's kind of take your pick. And I guess Tyrone Green for Quins as well in the Premiership has been in good form. Pepsi Buthelezi for the Sharks has also been pretty good, but I mean, you can only include so many. So, yeah, I honestly think the amount of guys who've been rewarded for some good form is pleasing and goes against that kind of argument that they're only kind of sticking to the same old tried and true, and they're injecting a little bit of youth into the squad around that kind of core structure of the main guys who we are used to seeing for the most part. But you guys let me know your thoughts on how the squad is looking. I do hope some guys, other than the standard kind of thing, get some minutes. The likes of Dweba at hooker could use some minutes. Someone other than Faf de Klerk could use a good run at 9. What they do with 10 will be an interesting one to see. I still think it's going to be Pollard, but yeah, I mean, Libok, I guess you could say, is another omission, to be fair, because he's been pretty good in the URC, but I never really thought he'd be in the conversation just based on stylistic and tactical purposes. But I mean, I'm sure he could adapt his game like Elton has at international level. But anyway, I'll stop going on. You guys let me know your thoughts on the squad. What do you reckon? I think the Welsh have got some job up against them, but yeah, we'll see what kind of squad Jacques names as we get closer to the actual games. But anyway, you guys have any thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.